Hello, everyone. Yeah, so today I guess is the third workshop, Introduction to Web Development workshop. So yeah, excited to meet you all. I started Langara like 2020, and then graduated with an associate 2022. I transferred to SFU, so 2 years ago. And yeah, I have just been in co-op for 16 months. Now excited to be back here presenting this website development workshop to you guys. So there will be like two parts around this workshop. Who have joined the Figma workshop yesterday? Okay, okay, a good amount of people. Yeah, so our workshop today will just be around making the HTML, CSS, JavaScript website of what we make yesterday, the Figma slides by Kian. It will be quite hands-on, so I don't expect all of you to like, I guess, always being able to code hands-on with me. There will be recording if you wanna like do it alongside later on. But yeah, I hope this can be useful for yeah, your Roblox hackathon later on. So it will be quite light. It will be like very focused on the HTML and CSS part. There's a little bit of JavaScript just for the headers. But yeah, I hope you enjoy the workshop. Oh yeah, also, if you have any questions regarding like transferring, any question about SFU getting co-op later, I'm always happy to answer any of your questions. Yeah. Yeah, so there's some prerequisites here if you wanna code along. I see that most people I think use their laptop. So yeah, here we have the prerequisites which like Visual Studio Code. You don't really need GitHub account, but if you want to like I guess publish it later into the GitHub pages, it will be useful. Yeah, and yeah. So today's agenda, we will have the introduction. So just kind of like what kind of like this definition meaning, and then we will build the website itself with Visual Studio Code, and then just basic Git comments if you want to follow it, so that we can publish it in GitHub later on, and then we will deploy it with GitHub pages. So as a disclaimer, this workshop is very short. It's like only less than 2 hours, and we might not even finish. I will try to finish most of the content. I will publish all the slides and the resources in the GitHub. So definitely no expectation to be proficient right away. So yeah, the idea is it's probably a bit different with we have taken like CPSC 10:30 or 10:45. Okay, yeah. So few amount of people. So yeah, it's probably a bit different. Where like I think in lecture or school you learn stuff like top down from the idea first, and then you go to lab. I will just do things bottom up, just build things, and then let you guys know what this means, and then go to the main concept later on. Yeah, so and then please reach out if you have any questions. I think there's Andy there, April there, if you like have any question regarding some setup. So yeah. So yeah, okay, so why do we need to learn this kind of stuff? Why do we need to learn HTML, CSS, and JavaScript? So like I think nowadays, if you go to like workplace, if you go to other places, we use like all the fancy frameworks. I have been in two co-ops. First one was like I think a company called Visier, it's HR platform, and then the second one was a German company called SAP. All of those stuff even need this kind of knowledge, even though it doesn't use it directly. So they will use technology like React, Angular, right? So it's really useful, but I think it's not as useful if you don't know what happens underneath. So HTML, CSS, and JavaScript knowledge is like way more useful. I see like some of my friends who then don't have like this kind of foundation can be like hard for you if you want to progress faster in the workplace later on. So getting this knowledge, even though you don't kind of use it later on, will be really useful. So yeah, it's like React, Angular, Vue, Svelte. It's like I guess like one of the big four of like the programming frameworks. So if you don't know what programming frameworks are, it's just like things that builds on top of this HTML, CSS, and JavaScript thing to allow us to build things faster. Yeah. And yeah, all these fancy frameworks just like the extension of these three stuff that we are gonna learn today. So focus on the basic first, and then everything else like you will have like transferable skills. So yeah, I'll just go a bit with the kind of very basic introduction of what each of these means. So HTML is like a hypertext markup language. It's just the content. So if you have like a professor, for example, if you go like some website, if you see the professor, sometimes they only make their own HTML. It's like what's the only thing that's needed. And then CSS is like the presentational to make things look beautiful. CSS stands for cascading style sheets. And then JavaScript is like what makes the content interactive, or like it's being later on in big companies, it like how it like connect with the database, backend, all the infrastructure. Yeah, it's the logic. So yeah, you will think of it something like this, like it's like structure. Like I think a skeleton itself would be able to maybe move, but maybe we want to use the CSS to make it like less a good presentation, right? I think presentation is very key nowadays. If you want to build things, you want to make them like you, I guess. And you have JavaScript to make sure like it's interactive. It can interact with everything. Yeah. So HTML is the standard language to display the content and structure of website. And then the HTML document is made of HTML elements. So you have like a lot of elements containing text or images, the content. And it ends with .html or .htm. We here have taken like CPSC 1050, for example. Is there anyone who's taken 1050? Okay, few amount of people. But yeah, so HTML is quite interesting because like what happens under the hood is just like a tree. So everything is just has like one root, and then like it just branches down. For example, like the head, the body, and then the footer, it's all just tree. So it's kind of interesting how like all this computer science knowledge kind of like transfer to each other. Yeah, so we have like these HTML elements where basically just the root is a HTML element, and it just transfer down to each child have HTML elements until like, yeah, it's just like just passes down until whatever you have in your website. So element name has like usually a bracket, and then they just contain like the attributes itself and then the content. You will learn more about this. So basically you just need to remember it has attributes and content. So yeah, in here. So element name is like, I guess, the HTML element. This is the attribute name, and then this is the content itself. And then it usually have like this, like the opening tag and closing tag. But also some element can be like self-closing in terms of like you see this angle, like this slash, this like opening and closing, but this is like self-containing, which means like it doesn't have the content itself, just like the slash in here. So we have the examples here. Like this is like the one with containing. EM just is for like italic, so you can see that it's kind of italic. HR is just a self-contained one, it's just horizontal line. And we have A with the attribute href. It just leads you to this SFU website in my university, which is the content. Yeah, and then that's it, like very basic introduction for HTML. We have CSS also. CSS is what makes it, how it gives the styles. It consists of style rules. And then the file name ends with .css. So CSS style rule consists of whereas HTML consists of the attribute on content, CSS just stands for style rule consists of the selector. What do you want to select? And then the declaration. So basically you select the header. So what to declare is like the declaration is just the in property. So like the value pair, what do you want to decorate in header? Like for example, the font size is the key, and then the value is like 16 pixels, for example. So yeah, this is the style rule, consists of the selector and the declaration, the property value pair. Selector, property value is like the syntax, and then like this is like some of the examples here. EM, which is the selector, colors, red is just the declaration of the property and value. Yeah, and then yeah, we have JavaScript. So it's programming language for the World Wide Web. I think most jobs nowadays, or like in the companies, require JavaScript. So it will be used a bit minimally for the workshop to make some parts more interactive. But tomorrow, as I host the React workshop, I will refactor all of this HTML, CSS, JavaScript into React file, and then add a bit more JavaScript as we have like a small backend to add like this JavaScript stuff. Yeah. Oh, this is also from SFU. So if you have SFU, it's like CMA 272, but for Langara, it's like CPSC 1030 for the HTML CSS part and CPSC 1045 for the JavaScript part. But I know there's also like in the postgraduate diploma, the website, mobile, and app development. I think that's also a really useful course. And yeah, and then if you don't want to take all of these courses, I learned much more heavily on FreeCodeCamp. That's my first exposure to programming language, and I think that has helped me to kind of like excel at like the next programming languages class. I learned this before the first classes Java, and I think even though there's like some things different in there, it really helped me to become like have that good foundation, so that I can like continue to excel like in all the CSS courses at Langara. Yeah, what I like about FreeCodeCamp is just it's very hands-on. You need to write stuff. You don't read video, because like watching video sometimes can be hard to actually retain the content. And yeah, there's some resources here. I think I posted my resources on this Discord. This just the React. I have this post, so everything that I posted here, you can access it now or in the future. And yeah, we can just go dive in and build the things. So I'm gonna open my website here. Yeah, so here we have the Google Slides, which is the one we have presented now. And I have the GitHub code, which contains the finished ones also, but the template for you to start with. I also have the Notion handbook. This can come in handy for the Wikipedia if you want to have more knowledge, and also the deployment later on. But I think most stuff you can also find it in the internet. I just make it easier. And yeah, we have also the Figma design. This is useful as we want to make the content from what our Figma workshop has made yesterday. Yeah, but there's absolutely no Figma knowledge required. But it'll be really useful as we try to make things from design first. You need to design first to get like a good exposure, and then you kind of code. And yeah, you will learn more about it later on if you like in your company or other stuff. Like you want to have a solid kind of things of what to do. Like I think as you progress more, coding is the easy part. You want to get the requirements, and requirements is usually the harder part, talking with clients and all the stuff. Yeah, so I will go ahead, and if you want to, so you can go to this GitHub code, the one I sent. So we have this repository. So as the time is short, if you know how to make GitHub, you can easily git clone it. So you can just git clone this stuff. But if you don't have time, you can just download the zip file here. I will just do the things again. I will git clone it again. So I have my document here. I have my projects. So just like in any random folder, for example, Langara Hacks. So you can open this in terminal. So yeah, if you open it on zip file, you don't need to follow this. So I will just do in here, SSH, HTTPS or SSH should work fine. And I'll just git clone this. So it might not be hard. Just git clone. Yeah, and then if I open the file here, so usually this is the website. I will just drag and drop this to the VS Code. And yeah, I will have all of this. So yeah, let me know if you have any questions. Just raise your hand every time if you have anything. I'm not sure if I might be progressing too slowly or too fast or too slow. And yeah, so we have the portfolio end here. It's like the finished ones, and also the portfolio start here, which is like the baseline you want to start with. But I'm also gonna just try to make things from scratch if you like making things from scratch, or if you just don't have the zip file, if you don't have, you cannot download it. So I will go ahead and just make a new folder here. Yeah, let me know if the font is too small. I will just zoom again. Portfolio live. And yeah, so we can go ahead and start with making a new file. So we have, I guess in here, right? We have 3 files here, the HTML, the 3 main files, which is the HTML, index.series HTML, and then new file again, script.javascript, and then new file again, style.css. Yeah. And then I also have this default.css file. We'll tell you more about why we have 2 CSS files. So yeah. So for VS Code, there's a emmet abbreviation. I believe this comes by default. So you can just do HTML, /5, enter, and it will just give you like the basic kind of starting point of like the header. It doesn't have go through any content, but just like the kind of template for HTML5 to start with. I'll just change this to portfolio. And then, yeah, I have these bodies, for example, hello world. So I will go ahead and try to open this file. So in Visual Studio Code, usually what I will really recommend to people is download the extension called live preview, I think. Open with live server. Yeah. So this Visual Studio Code, you can download this one. So what it allows you to do for this live server is basically every time you make changes on the HTML, CSS, or JavaScript, it will automatically refresh. So it just makes development faster. Yeah. Instead of having to actually kind of like refresh the website every time. So I will go ahead and just open this with live server. So yeah, we can see we have made our first website here. Hello world. So yeah, yeah, and then we have this CSS file. So if you see the start here, the CSS file also have some root file. So you can easily get this from Google Fonts. For example, if you go Google Fonts, and you can just easily browse fonts, and then you can copy stuff from here. For example, if you want to get this, and then you can just easily download it. Yeah, but I will just go ahead and just copy this. This is the font family. It's fine if you don't want to use any font family. So import URL here, and then we also have this root. So this stuff is from the Figma file. I kind of forget how to actually get it, but it takes a while, less time when I did this workshop. So there's a Figma plugin where you just kind of can get the color palette of the file, which is really useful. I will let you know in the website later on how to actually get this information. But yeah, this is kind of like the variable you want to work with. So it's easy to develop later on. Yeah. So it's always useful to have this variable start stuff. So I'm just gonna, yeah, like you want to make a comment here because like we have like a lot of sections and we only have one CSS file. And then later on, also in my slide, let's see. Yeah, so we have this JOS custom CSS research. This is like on the last page of the Google Slides. So this is for the Google Slides. This is for the default.css. So you see here in the default.css, we have all of this, right? It comes from this website. So what it means is that I think usually HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, they have like a lot of pre-configured built-in that some of the developers don't really like. So, and then personally, I also don't really like having all of those stuff. So I just go ahead and copy this to make sure like the website is properly reset. There's like some margin padding, like some styling. Yeah. So I just copy this to default CSS. Yeah. And then how do we actually import the CSS into HTML file? So we can just go here into link.css. It's another AMAT abbreviation, which is like a shortcut for you to easily be able to run this. Then I'll just go tab, press tab, and yeah, style.css. If you can make sure it links to the correct one if you click this. So yeah, it corrects to the correct style.css. And then I can also just ring CSS again, tab, and then ring to the default CSS. Yeah. Yeah, I think this should be good. And yeah, so we're going to the Figma right now. So we want to make this website, right? So we have Sebastian Lee here. We have the header here. We have the about section here. We have the project section here, and we have the guestbook section here. So what I'm gonna make today, I think I'm just gonna make up until the project section. The guestbook is something that I will implement later on with the React workshop, because this feature also requires you to, I guess, have some backend functionality where you have enter your name here and then add it here. You can still technically make it locally, but what we envision is this kind of information all is whenever you open it from like other laptops, it will have the same kind of data. So I guess that's like a true backend, right? You can have a local storage, but it will only be visible from your own laptop, but like not from other laptops. So yeah, we'll not implement this for now. We'll implement this tomorrow. So yeah, based on the section, we have 4 sections here. The header, the hero. We will say the hero. Hero section is usually called like as the kind of the intro section, and then we have this about section, and then we have this project section. So 4 sections. So we can go ahead and make the sections. So body, we have this header, right? And then we have like sections. So I'm just like spamming things here. Just like as initial template. Yeah, header, section here. So header is this is just header. This is just hero section. And this is just about section. And this is project section. Yeah, so if we refresh this, we open the website here. Let's see. Yeah, it should be here. Yeah, notice that it doesn't have like, I guess, any margin or padding, which is really nice. If you don't have the custom CSS reset, you will expect this to have like some kind of margin, so still have like some distance with the top left corner. But yeah, we don't have one right now. So yeah, so I'm just gonna have a 2 minutes quick break if you have anything, because I'm also just gonna prepare something meanwhile. So yeah, feel free to have a 2 minutes quick break for now. Hey. Yeah.
Actually, do to get on the default.
Default CSS? Yeah, so to get the default CSS, you have this slide that I provided in the Discord. So, but if you want to go to Google, you can just come out, custom CSS reset. Oh, modern CSS reset. You can Google
I was
this.
talking about the HTML that you.
Oh, sorry. Which one again?
The HTML thing. You
Oh, yeah.
press something and all the default code.
Yeah. So for HTML, I will just remove this. HTML5:5. Yeah. And then just enter it. Yeah. Yeah, no worries. Yeah. Okay, I guess we can continue. Yeah, so yeah, previously we have this. We have like 4 things: header and the sections. And I'm just gonna go ahead and refactor few stuff here. So usually with header, so we have like this head element, right? And the body. So head is basically just all the metadata, like whatever like is linked in here. but whatever is inside the head doesn't have any content. It's just like, I guess, you link it to the CSS file, you link it to the JavaScript file, and just the title later on. It doesn't have any effect on the presentation side of the website itself. And all of that goes inside the body. And then we have the header here, which is usually the header of the website. And we have section here. So usually what goes after the header itself is the main body. So like this, the main element tag. And then whatever all the inside, the real content of the real body of the website goes there. So this section will all just go under this section. Yeah. So I think in Visual Studio Code, you have this kind of option, like in Mac, it's like shift option F. It will automatically like just reformat your file. It's not needed, but it can come in handy if you want it. Just shift option F. I'm not sure what's in Windows, maybe shift alt F, you can try. Yeah. So just in this section, about section and project section. Yeah. So yeah, looking good. And yeah, so what we are gonna go the direction from here is just we are gonna finish all the HTML first. And then we just gonna make the CSS, the first CSS is after all the HTML is finished. The reason of that is I think there's kind of like two CSS school of thought for those who are curious. Just do one that's like HTML first and then CSS later. So all this class name or like the ID of the CSS, it's like very general. But if you have learned any CSS called Tailwind, they usually just go ahead and then have the presentation style on the HTML itself. So I'm just going with the first one. And I think the first one is usually more easier for beginners so that you are able to think more things separately. So the term of this is CSS Zen Garden, I think, if I search it here. So it basically means, I think if I go into visual designs, yeah. So all of this stuff, right? We have all of this different stuff, right? It's all a really cool website. And what's interesting about all of this is that it all has the same HTML files. So there's no any difference on HTML files. What makes all of this different is just the difference on CSS files, like the styling style of it. So I find this really cool. And this is like kind of the CSS school of thought that I'm going today, which is I think what has always been until Tailwind kind of disrupted the CSS industry like around a few years ago. Yeah. So just gonna go back here. Yeah. So I'm gonna decorate the file here. Yeah, I'm just gonna be full screen here. It should look good. And yeah, so we're just gonna make the header. So the header, if we go to the Figma here, yeah, the header just contains Sebastian Lee and about projects, contact, and view resume. So we can go ahead and then make it. There's like two content here, and that's different, right? The Sebastian Lee part and then this part on the right. So we wanna think in like kind of container, like we want to think as a group, right? So we have a header group here, it's the first grouping. So we want to separate this group and this group. So we can go ahead and then make two group here. So usually in HTML, we just go with div. Div is like the standard container, it's sort of a divider. It's not as recommended to always use div all the time because now here we have header and main, right? It all doesn't have any kind of like doesn't have like any functional meaning. All the functions are the same, but it has like this kind of like semantic meaning where it's like, okay, this is header. It defines its header, but it doesn't really like if you change it to div, it's like still working fine. But just for the sanity of programmers, so you know that these things are for headers. Yeah. So I'm just gonna make div here. And then we're gonna make div. This is the div, but this is like the kind of navigation, right? So in the website, you have like this header, like the link, right? So this is usually the navigation, which is like a special type of div. So you can think all of the HTML element container almost as a special type of div, like header, main, all those and section are just a special type of div. Nav is also one. And yeah, so the div here, we want to make it in order to be in order for us to be able to style it with the CSS, you want to select it later on, right? But if you just name it as div, you cannot select it. I want to select the div. We have like 5,000 div. Which div you want to select? So here is where the attribute, the HTML attribute, notice that I think last time I said the HTML has attribute or content, right? So we want to have the attribute of class. So class here is header title. So we have this strip. So it means just like the title that's inside the header. So usually I think it's also like some programmer convention here, header strip title. And then the nav is also like, so for nav, we don't really need to have a class name because usually one website usually only have one nav. So we don't really need to have a class name. Yeah, so we can go ahead and then just put paragraph here, the class. So there's also two ways of doing if you wanna p here, right? And then just class dot header name and put Sebastian Lee here. Can put anything. You can put your name or yeah, just like any name. So we have this stuff, and we also have nav here. So the nav here, so we have the nav stands for navigation, and here it's kind of a list, right? It's like usually we can put it as a div, like each of these as a div or a paragraph. But usually what would be helpful, we want to make it as an unordered list. So there's a HTML called UL, unordered list. So this stands for anything that's like kind of like a list, but like there's an unordered list and a ordered list. Unordered list basically anything that's like doesn't really have any number or ordering with it. So yeah, we're just gonna go ahead and implement an unordered list here, and then unordered list is just the container, and then we have the list here about if you go in this Figma file about projects, contact, and view resume. Yeah, projects, contact, and then view resume. Yeah. So if we see the file here, we need to save it, open it. Yeah. So we have this section. Yeah, that's fine. It will look ugly at first, but as long as you focus on the content first, that will be helpful. So, but this is just a list, right? If we see in the Figma design, we probably think that if we click the about here, you want to redirect it to the about. So we can go ahead and then use a tag called a tag. Anchor stands for anchor tag. href. So href is just pointing to this section, each of this section. So for example, we make it this about section, right? Because this is the about section. So we just remove this. Yeah, will look like this. And so this is called, this is stands for ID. So for CSS selectors, it's usually either an ID or a class. So ID is for anything that's like very unique, like you only have one thing in the entire website. But class is usually like for anything. So for example, like a container, like if you make a if we make a container, it will just become anything can be container, right? So for example, like this class later on, we will decorate it in the CSS. It will have this content container here, and then this class is like content container. So the CSS class will have everything, anything that selects content container will be decorated by any tag that has this content container, right? And then this href can only point to an ID because you want to point to one thing, right? You want to redirect to one thing. It doesn't make sense if you redirect to multiple links. So where do you want to go? If you use Google Map, you want to go to one destination. So in the hero section, I guess we can make an ID of hero here, which makes sense because now the about have the ID of about. So this ID of about is linked from this anchor tag, which is linked to about section. And yeah, so we can just go ahead. This is IDs projects. And yeah, so we can, I guess, just copy paste this to projects and then just change this to projects. Yeah. So for contact, it can go multiple way. So because we don't have a contact section today, we're just gonna be like this. We don't have this, right? We can also do like this, I think. Mail too, I think. Or this is my email, but I will just use Bastian Lee, for example. kind of interesting. So if you open it right now, so if you put contact here, yeah, it will let you to open a mail page that let you, I guess, write into, just put an email there. Yeah. So yeah, yeah, but you can, this is just a useful feature if you want to just put a mail directly. And yeah, so Sebastian Lee, and then we have this, we also want to decorate this header. Usually header is only one, but we will just want to make a container here. So we have a class of container, which we will decorate later on. And then we have this header class because it's a header. Yeah, so I'm just gonna go ahead in here to fix the typo. And yeah, we have our first set of the heading. And then yeah, we're just gonna decorate away with the Figma design later on. So yeah, this first section is done. We're also gonna go away and decorate the hero section now. Yeah, does anyone have any questions up until this point, or like stuck at some point? Good. Okay, so I will go to the hero section now. So for the hero section, what we want to focus is there's like a lot of text here. So we want to think in containers, right? So we have this hello world. My name is Bastian Lee, software engineer. So there's like kind of many moving pieces, right? So we want to like kind of map it, think it in grouping. We want to like kind of separate each things. So what we want to do is we can just have this as a paragraph. This is a one paragraph. This is like maybe the header. So H1. So usually in a website, there's like the single biggest font in the website will be H1. So I believe this will be the H1 because this is the biggest font in the website. So this is just a normal head, normal paragraph. So P tag, this is a H1, the biggest, I guess, stands for the header. And this is just another paragraph. And then this will later just be a button, which we will make later soon. So yeah, I can move the zero section. So we make a paragraph here. Hello world. My name is, and then we also want to make a H1 here, Sebastian Lee. And then we want to make a paragraph class here. So if you want to notice here, this is software engineer is a bit black compared to this the rest of the text. So we use a HTML property called span. So if we go ahead, so span is useful later on if you want to select a subset of the text, so you can decorate it individually. Software engineer, and then yeah, just a driven individual interested in building high quality. Yeah, you can just put anything for now, but yeah, I'm just gonna follow the whatever is in there. Yeah, and then later on we have the buttons also. But before moving on to the buttons, this can be a bit confusing at first because we have two paragraph tag, right? So how would we later on make sure select which one is which? So now we can use another CSS. We can decorate it with another CSS selector, the class selector. So this P tag is the class of hero intro text. Just you can be like any meaningful, just anything that's like can be helpful. So this is inside the hero, so it's hero here. Just the same thing as like this is inside the header, so it's a header here. Yeah, I guess like this one to make it like more understandable for people. Just this is like header, right? So yeah, so header title, header name, it's the same hero intro text, and then here. So for H1, we don't really need to put a class because H1, as I said, is the single biggest text in the website, right? So you select H1, and in the ideal website, that's only linked to like one HTML tag, and then we can go based on that assumptions. So we don't need to have any styling, any class name or ID, and then div the p tag here. This one it's another selector, hero description, just like I guess as a more descriptive stuff, and then yeah, should we should have noting difference here, just like the section here. And then we have the div here. So for the div, if you see here, it will be like containing like 3 content, right? So as this is like in a single line, or I guess it's like a group, right? It's a group of buttons. We want to make a div. So as just a standard container, and it just contains like 3 buttons. So we can go ahead and then div. And then notice this GitHub email link in. We would assume that if this is like looks like a button. So if we click this, it will lead us to the GitHub website or the email website or the linked website, right? So because it links us somewhere, it must be an anchor tag. So here we can put an anchor tag here, but it's a button, right? So we want to decorate it as a button. So we can put a class of button here, which we will decorate later on. And then if you download my stuff later on, you have the assets here, which includes the icon. So I will just go ahead and copy this in the portfolio live. So it have all the icons. But if not, it's totally fine. You can just use the text of GitHub itself, and then you can easily later again get the content. So I'm just gonna put image src / assets icons strip github.sfg, and then just alt is like the description for those who cannot read, or for those who cannot see the website, who cannot easily, who is blind, and it usually have like a voice recorder. So you want to have an alt, or that's for like one of the cases. The other cases, if the image just fails to load, so you want to explain what these images, and so we can just put GitHub here, and then so we can also do the same with the others. So the href here. So if you want to put the href here, so we can see what happens if the href is empty. So GitHub here, it will not do anything. So you can populate it with your GitHub later on. But if for example, if I put my GitHub, for example, here, just copy a link, and then click the GitHub, it will lead to my website. So that's the anchor tag, because it wants us to direct it somewhere, right? I would just go ahead and change this to Sebastian Lee, just to make sure it's consistent. And we have the email later on also, image src, do the same thing, assets icon, icon email.sfg, it's like email icon, and just be email, and class is button here. So it's the same class. It's GitHub and email. We would assume it's the same button, so we use the same class. And so just do the same thing again. A tag, anchor tag, href can be anything later on. And the class is button also, just btns. And then image, so we can just do the same assets, icon, and then icon email sfg, email LinkedIn icon. So there's a typo here, should be icon LinkedIn. And LinkedIn. So if we see it now here, we can see all the descriptions. Of course, still looks ugly. We just want to finish wrapping up here, and then we can go ahead with the CSS later on. And I guess this is the end of this hero section. So we can go the hero sections, and then we can go ahead and go to this about section. So can go to Figma file again. So here we have kind of 2 things, right? I think one of things in grouping. So I think what makes styling hard, usually it's hard to visualize it, how it works under the hood. But we can see there's like 2 groupings here. So the text, and then the images, and then later on, this is like the heading and then the paragraph. So there's like 2 grouping here, left and right. So we can go ahead and then make these 2 grouping, this about section. So this, I guess, needs to be content in a wrapper, right? Because you think in groups, so this will be just be standard div. So not sure if I've mentioned before, but for div, usually can use dot and just tap, it will just count as div. as div is like very basic, so it will just be like the simplest, which is like from dot. We can just about content here, and then we have image, right? Image src. You can go ahead and go assets and then profile GPG. And then alt is just the Sebastian Lee profile image for those who later on cannot see the image. And yeah, so if we see it here now in the website, yeah, we have this image already done. It's nice. Then we have the about content. So we can go ahead and see again what's next. So we want to have the about me, the heading, and then the two paragraph here. So what would make it useful is to make it inside. So mention that I think the last header, the heading we have is H1, it's the biggest one. So usually up to people, but usually we just go down like one at a time, right? Since this is the biggest one, about is I guess the second biggest from what we see, project second biggest. So we can just use the H2 tag, the second biggest heading, about me. And then we can go P tag. And yeah, so hey there, my name is Sebastian Lee. I am software system student. Wait, okay. Yeah, kind of lazy to write all of this, but I'm just gonna provide the bare minimum. Hey there, my name is. Or if you want to, you can just go to my GitHub later on, and then see if we go from my website. If you go to my website here, the post, this thing, the GitHub code, and you can just go to portfolio end. You don't really need to see the rest, but yeah, I will just go ahead and copy this stuff. I think just to get the understanding, I would assume this should be quite straightforward. Just want to make things easier and faster so we can go to the harder stuff later on. So this is the P tag. So I'm just going to explain a bit of stuff. P tag here. We have the anchor tag here, Simon Fraser University. Just like the anchor, it links to SFU. We can change it to Langara College, and then Langara.ca. And yeah, we also have this anchor tag here, which is links to various projects. So yeah, we can see in the Figma later on. This thing has like a links. Yeah. So we use the anchor tag, which kind of change its styling. Various projects also change its styling because it will link to the projects here, which is different from this, I guess, software engineer. It's kind of like the same kind of idea, right? It's a selected text in a paragraph, but the difference is here, the software engineer is just a normal text. It's just a kind of different from a presentational standpoint, but you cannot click it. But these two things, we can click it. That's why in here we use anchor tag, but this one uses span tag. Yeah. So yeah, so feel free to use any words here. This is just a div here. Yeah. So I guess that's it for the about. Quite quick. I think. Yeah. So we can just move into the section. The CSS part will have also like way more explanation because it actually changes things now. So yeah, this project section. Can go to Figma site again. Yeah, we have the project here. Yeah, so I think this is quite similar with this about me. You can see that it has two grouping here. This project, the SFE website. So we have like two left and right. So we can go ahead and then use that. So this will be an image, and then this will be the div again. Yeah. So go ahead. You see. Yeah. And use image src and image src dot slash assets project one image dot png, and then just project image. And then this is just a div later on. So div class. So this is a projects. So just use projects here. Okay, just use projects, project item, and description. because it's just a single project here, right? So just use project instead of projects. So a bit different. It's fine. And so notice that these projects, I think, oh yeah, we haven't written the project. So this project structure is very similar with about me. So it will be a H2 also. And projects. And then this is the H3 SSSS website, V2. And so if you go here, we have this kind of container. So this is the header, the paragraph, and then the button. So we can just go ahead. This is the item description, right? So we said a header, a paragraph, and then later on a button. So we can just use it as a div later on. And yeah, the official website of the system society. Yeah, for those who are curious, software system society is my major at SFU. It's just like subset of CS. Yeah. So, and then the div here is just, yeah, we want to make sure that this has this kind of button, right? So just another A tag with a class of button. View projects, and then A tag, and then class of button. This is just a view site. And yeah, and this href can be just an empty one, but feel free to just use it with like any other website URL. And yeah, so we also want to populate the stuff of like this div. So the golden rule is if it's a div, you probably need a class or an ID, right? So you see throughout the code, this div, all of this div, you need a class or ID because div is very basic that it's usually useful if you have some kind of another set of identifier. So just gonna go ahead and then just project item actions. So yeah, can be anything, but yeah. So this is like two strips just because like it means that it's nested or like inside something. So it's like an actions that's inside an item that's inside a project. And yeah. So I guess that's the end of project. Yeah. So yeah, quite ugly now, but this is how you would see a SFU professor website later on. I think you see something similar like this, like professor website. And if you see like, I don't know, I'm just like quite curious. Usually like professor website is like just very basic. You will see something like that, I think. But yeah, I'll just back on track. And yeah, we can go to the CSS part now. So we have all of these HTML elements, and then we have this default.css. This is from the modern CSS reset that we explained before. And then yeah, our CSS is we only have this root. Root just means like it selects everything. It doesn't change anything here. This one just creates a variable of color primary 0. It creates a variable which you can use later on. Yeah. So let's see. Yeah. Style CSS. So I'm just gonna make the design here. So we have this thing, right? Variable start. So we want to kind of just like HTML later on, we make all the main and then all the sections. We kind of like want to think kind of the structure of the very general generic structure. We will do the same with CSS. So with CSS, we have the global, which stands for the global variable. I think you will use it in the programming language, like all over. And then it will be like the one that's like select everything, right? Like a button, for example, right? Button doesn't belong to any specific section, so it will just lies later on in this general global stack section. So and then now we can go to the actual section, which we have like the header start, header end, and then we have the, I guess, hero start, and then hero end, and then we can go to the about start, about end. So go ahead to project start and project end. Yeah. So yeah. So I'll just say it's like projects, I guess it's like multiple, like the ideas projects. Yeah. So this is the general structure that we're looking for. We have the variable. It's like anything that references variable. We have the global, we have the header, hero, about, and projects. So we can start with the global. So I would say in like CSS or like HTML, all of this stuff, definitely I don't code alone. There's like a lot of resources like ChatGPT, like other wiki. So it's definitely quite hard to like know with all of these terms, like all of the CSS. There's so many CSS characters. So it just takes a bit of use to be able to like, I guess, remember. I think the useful part of programming is you need to know the stuff exists, but you don't need to actually know it. But that's like good enough so you can build things. The scary part is like not knowing what you don't know, right? But now since I've given you exposure, at least you know that these things exist. You might not remember it, but that's fine. There's like all these sources in the internet, right? So you don't know, but you still know it exists. That's like I think still like a really good enough stuff to start out. So we can go ahead with HTML and body. So HTML and body here references to this. If you go to the HTML text, it's just the biggest one. Is the so HTML consists of header and a head and body is like the content, right? So we want to go ahead and select this style.css. Yeah. So this usually just just basically just selects the entire document. And yeah, we have scroll behavior smooth. So it will make you, if you scroll it later. So I can just go ahead if you are curious about how the end site looks like, just for like a presentational point of view. I will, if you go to my website here, my GitHub code, of course it will not, okay, there's some connection wrong here. Okay, that's fine. We'll just proceed later on. Just want to show you earlier how the end set looks like. Sebastian. Yeah, that's fine. And yeah, so I'm just gonna go ahead continue with the CSS. And yeah, so we have font family. So notice that at first we set like this font family of Manrope, which is like the general CSS style that we are gonna use. So Manrope here. And then in the case where Manrope cannot be selected, we want to provide the backup font. So we're just going to use sans serif here. And then font weight is like how, like the bold, like the weight of your font. So just like we're just picking like I just picked 500 here, and we have background color. So usually like in company or like other stuff that's like quite more enterprise software, or like I guess like more serious stuff, we never I guess reference the color directly. So that's why we have this root variable here. So we can go ahead and then just use this variable. So we have this color neutral white, right? And we can see from the Figma file, it has the background of white. And yeah, so we can just go ahead and then make reference this. So how do you reference it is CSS has kind of the var function. So you can use like a function in CSS, just reference this at color neutral white, which is just the same as pointing it to FFF directly. But it's just, I guess, more organized this way. And we also have our color. So if you see the color, so color stands for font color. I was like, I think confused at my first time here, how to find font color. There's no font color, but it just stands for color. So by default, this font color is just black. So we can just go ahead and then color neutral black here. But I guess sometimes the black cannot be as black. Like I guess this black, if you see it here, right? It's not like quite black, but we just say it as black. That's why here this is like 131314 instead of I think the general 0000. And yeah. And then yeah, that's it. So we can see how our website looks right now. Yeah, so we can see the font family is definitely different. And then the font color also looks different. And yeah, the scroll behavior smooth. I think if you go to projects here, yeah, you can see these projects here. It's smooth scroll behavior. I think I always use it in every website I make because I think it's just, I don't know, I like the transition. Instead of, for example, if we remove this stuff, it's like boom. So like, I don't know, I just like the way it moves, like it's smooth. So yeah, that's like, I guess, one of the properties that's really useful. And then we can go to main. So main here in the index.html, we have this main container, this main HTML element tag, which is like just the general content. Yeah, so yeah, I'm gonna explain this main. Yeah, this main has a display of flags. So yeah, flags, I think, would say one of the most important concept in CSS. So if you are curious, you can just use flags, maybe search flags, or yeah, this CSS flags box layout guide. This has been like one of the most useful website that I use. It's basically just the cheat sheet of a display flags. So I will just go ahead and see what it actually does. So display can be anything, right? It can be grid, it can be CC, can be grid, block, content, flow root, inline. For font, it's usually inline. For example, for an image, it's usually block. But for a container, if you want to like kind of order the stuff, most of the time I just use flags. So flags just like makes things ordering really easy. And then since we go like from top to bottom, the flags, we need to define the flags direction. By default, it's row. So if you don't want to just go from left to right, it's row. But you want to go from top to bottom. So we just said it's flags column. Okay, so we can see how it looks right now. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, it probably doesn't have any difference because it's going from top to bottom, right? But if we remove this, for example, it will just go from left to right, which is what we don't want this very cluttered. Yeah. So if you go to this section, we can see that each of this kind of have a gap, right? Yeah, this has a gap, this has a gap, this has a gap. So can go ahead and add gap 6 rem. So REM stands for, I think, CSS rem. You can search CSS rem. It's just the unit kind of the root EM. So it's just like some people use pixel. I think the default one is just 1 EM is equal to like 16 pixel. So this equals to 6 multiplied by 16, which is like 96 pixel. But yeah, I usually like to use REM instead of pixel just because it's a lesser kind of point to worry about. It's like simpler unit. And yeah. And then we have this. We have the gap now here, right? Notice that each of the section now has a gap, which is nice. Now we have a gap. And then now it doesn't sit quite right with me that it has like goes from like left to right, just very on the edge. Whereas we see in the design, it's like has the kind of spacing, like left and right. I think spacing is key in a modern website design. We want to have like a lot of white space. So we can go ahead with padding. So padding defines as like the distance between your border, like your outer, with your inside of the content. So sometimes you might confuse padding with margin. Margin is the outside, the distance between like your content with the outside word, but padding is the inside word. I think in this case, it may not matter as much in some contexts. I would say this one, we might not even matter that much. But yeah, so if we have the padding here, yeah, we can see that go to 100. Oh yeah, this is, yeah, we have the padding here. So it has some distance in the content here, right? So you can go absolutely more distance if you want, like I think 20 rem. So it will have like more distance. Yeah. So the first one, I think if we search here, so this is just, I believe, so if we go like 5, yeah, this 5 is just the left and right. So the first, we have two values here, right? The first value is like top and bottom. The second value is just left and right. And this is just the main section. We haven't gone to the section itself. So you will see that we still don't really have like a good kind of sizing, right? A padding margin. So we will define it later on. This is just for the main, which is like the general section here. So you see, this is the 9 RAM, and this is like the, yeah, just the below there. And yeah, so we can go to the container here. So what's container? So we can search again. class of container. So it's just this one in here. In this case, it just refers to the header. And yeah, just want to define the header, which is just container here. So we have a max width of the variable of the container max width. So I think this is quite useful in the kind of CSS. So you have like the max width here. So for like mobile development, like you want to make sure it's responsive for mobile. So you want to always have specify max width so that in mobile later on it will still be as responsive. And then we have margin auto here. So what does margin auto do? Margin auto is like one of the way you want to center a div. So later on, yeah, here we have the margin auto. It's still not as centered. We will be more centered later on, but with the margin auto, you can make it like more centered. Yeah. And then we have the container here. And we also have the content container, which is like the one we want to select also. This is like, I guess, the nice, yeah, we want to make sure it has like enough padding and margin. So max width, yeah, so max width is the same thing. I think we have the container max width. So if we see it, yeah, it's a bit less than the container max width. And then margin is also auto to make it centered. So for example, oh yeah, by the way, if I move like a comment here, it's just like in MacBook, it's like command slash. I believe in Windows it can be control slash. Yeah, just to make sure it doesn't apply. So this is without the margin auto, and this is with the margin auto. So yeah, I think it's quite nice now that it's because you specify the max width, you can only have this size, and then you have the margin auto. Now it's all centered here. Yeah. And then we want to specify the heading also, the H1, H2, H3. So yeah, you can also use a comma here. So it means that it will just select all these three elements at once for in CSS. Since it's a heading, we want the font weight bigger than the normal font weight 700, and then line height of 125%. So by default, the line height is 100%, like a normal line height. But because it's a heading, we want it to be bigger and useful. So yeah, I think we can. It may not be as obvious, but yeah, it has a higher line height, like a takes more like vertical space compared to usual. And now we can decorate each of the H1, just font size 2.75 rem, and then H2 font size 2 rem, and H3 font size 1.5 rem. And yeah, so now it'll be like, yeah, it will be quite big. And then we can use the anchor tag now. We can decorate the anchor tag. And so yeah, the anchor tag here is just the default anchor tag, like this one, the about, projects, and content. So we can go ahead, have the text decoration of none. So what does it do? It will just make sure it doesn't have this kind of blue. Yeah. So it removes the underline basically. So notice that it has underline. I think that's quite a very common practice in the 90s where you have like all the anchor text usually underlined. But I think I find in the modern web design, usually we don't have those anymore. So it will look nicer. So that it doesn't have the underline. And we have the color here. Just the stuff that we have this is just color primary 5. And yeah, this is the color here. So if you're curious about the color, you can, I think, also take a look at this color in the Figma file. You will be able to see how each one looks like. Yeah. So just gonna go ahead with the, but yeah, now that we don't have underline, it may not be as obvious whether this is a link or not, right? Like this about projects content, it just looks blue, but how do we know that it's actually a link, right? So one thing that we use nowadays is just on hover, we have the text decoration now to be underlined. Yeah, so if we go ahead, yeah, so if we hover it, underline, right? So it gives like a good user experience on, yeah, this is a link that you can click. And yeah, and now we are going to the big stuff, which is the button. So button will be used all throughout the website. like this GitHub email link in, view resume, view project, view site. So yeah, with a good kind of planning, you can see like how all of these classes are like very useful. It's like very reusable. It's like very good component in programming. No matter like what domain you are, you want to make things as reusable as possible. So we have like background color for the here. So var of color primary 5. So yeah, if you don't have like this variable, you can just like define it later. Can look at the GitHub code later. And then the var of the color is just color neutral white. So yeah, the font color will be white because standard one is like black. And yeah, you can see now what happens. Let's see. Yeah, so still look kind of ugly. Doesn't really look like a button. So we can first off add a border none. Yeah, so doesn't do anything. We'll just remove it for now. Things might not be as obvious. We want to add more padding here. The padding here. So padding left 1 rem, padding right 1 rem. So now it has the padding here. But yeah, it's like not centered, right? So yeah, we can use this display flex. So notice how I use flex again. So flex is to make things like centered, to make things ordered. Just I think the easiest way, I think in a programming usually one of the most common jokes is like, so you're a programmer, do you know how to center a div? So sometimes it's quite hard to center a div, like to make things centered. So in here, I've shown you 2 ways to center a div. The first way is like using max width and margin. So you want to specify the maximum width and then you margin it to auto, it will be centered. One of the other ways is using a flex. So this make it as a flex and then align items to center. Yeah. So this will be center now. But now it's like, oh, kind of crazy. It's like all over the thing. So we want to go ahead and then let's see, use gap. That's 0.5 rem. So the gap is just the between the GitHub icon and then the GitHub email link itself. And we want to set the height, I guess. Height is the 2.5 rem. So it has a bigger height now. And border none. Let's see. Yeah, this is what we have done. No border. And then border radius. We want to make it look like a button, right? So for rem, yeah. And then we have the font weight 600. So now the font weight has a font weight and then the transition. So yeah, notice that it's still very long. So these things are not taken care of globally. So that's why in the global variable button here, you don't have things to specify that this should take, yeah, this should be like kind of be condensed, right? So we are going to address it later in the hero section to make sure that now it goes from top to down, right? But if we later address it as a from left to right, it will be able to taken care of. So yeah, please just please ignore it. Please ignore the horizontal space for now. Yeah, and then one of the good things, one of the fun things we can do with CSS is a transition. So if you do things, it will like have animation. So we can use a transition of, I guess before that, I can make it on hover first. So .btn on hover. The same thing with anchor tag with on hover. So text decoration none. Because I think before, if you link it, it has a text decoration of none. And you want to transform it, right? Transform is like basically you want to change the property, like maybe you want to move it somewhere. So usually just there's a lot of things, but usually the one that I use is translate y. It's just like move things up of minus 0.2 em. It just moves things up. So if you refresh here, right, it doesn't actually do anything because we haven't kind of explained how. Wait. Oh, sorry, it's incorrect. Yeah, so it moved, right? Yeah, it moves, but it looks kind of very rough, right? We want to make it smooth. So we want to make a transition of transform of 0.25 second. So this will make things to have the transform instead of instantly, it will go throughout 0.25 second. So now if we do it, yeah, it's smooth now. So it's like it's not rough. So kind of like I guess the basic idea of web design where you want to make things smooth. And yeah, and yeah, kind of like this project, right? It's smooth. Contact is like if you go to about, it's smooth. This thing is like kind of smooth. So like no like rough animation. And yeah, and then notice that I think in here we have like okay, yeah. So we can just go ahead and then so later on we can just go ahead and then go to the header now. So global is ending for now. I will also let you know later on how we make things more responsive. Yeah. So I guess I will just take a quick 2 minutes break here. If you wanna go to washroom or something, and or just take a bottle. So I think this has been like an hour. So just wanna chill first. Yeah. Um, okay, I think we can start now. Yeah, so just going on. Yeah. So we have about 25 minutes left. Hopefully most of this can be finished. Yeah, let's see what we can do. I think, yeah, just a lot of this will be, now that you have like, the harder part is, I guess, the knowledge of like, you wanna see the flex, right? As long as you get kind of the general knowledge later on, I think a lot of these things of like the CSS stuff can be quite kind of repetitive. Just, I think, yeah, the harder part can be harder to understand, but hopefully as you follow through, you will understand like what each piece of this line of code do. Yeah, so we can go ahead with the header. So if you see the header here, the header has a ID of header, but since header tag is like only one here, which I guess most header will always do, we can just use header here, and it has a display. Yeah, so we use a display of flex again. We want to go from so I think and then we have the padding here of 1.5 rem, 1 rem, and gap is 1 rem. Yeah, so it looks like this. Still not as fancy. And I think one of the point that I was emphasizing up until now was that we also want to make it responsive with mobile, right? So now it's responsive, right? And then one of the key idea of web development is we want to make a mobile first design, mobile first development. So the way we think about it is we develop for a mobile website, mobile interface first, and then the laptop is the second one. Because I think in the website, I think in the last like kind of 10 or like 15 years, there are more markets for mobile people. So we just focus on the mobile. So now I'm just going to develop this with I guess. So yeah, if you like right click here and click inspect, you can do this. I believe you can do this in Chrome browsers at least. And then yeah, so we can use a dimension as iPhone 12 Pro. I just use the dimension of iPhone. It's like most used. Yeah, so it looks good, right? So, and then with the Langara Hacks also, I don't think Kian provided the design for the website for the phone. That's fine. We can kind of like see, because there's only like few things very different. Like this one about just go, instead of left right, just top and bottom. And then the projects will be just be left right will be top bottom. So yeah. So this is the header for now. Yeah, it will just look like this for now. So I think we can use flex direction of column here, so that instead of going this, it will just go like this. Yeah, so the heading will look like this, and then the header strip title here. So it will be just a class. So class is with a dot, and an ID. You reference an ID with the wall sign. Not sure what's the other names. Yeah, header title here. So header title, this is the Sebastian Lee, and so it will just go mostly back and forth like with display flex again. I think if you see the header title here, header title, it will just be Sebastian Lee itself, right? So it doesn't really order stuff per se. It just gives you making sure that you want to center it. So we have justified content here. So it's either, you see in Flex, you usually either use justified content or align items. I forgot which one is which, but basically the one is like centering the X plane and the other one is centering the Y plane. So in here, the Sebastian Lee here, I think if we, let's see. Yeah, so it will just be a bit kind of space between, it has like some space. Not sure if there's any difference. But yeah, I will just assume this is the justified content for now, a space between to make sure things are centered. And I think the align items are the one that's making things more centered. Yeah, so nothing much difference. This is just, I think, the kind of design that we are doing. And yeah, and we want to go to with the header name here. So header name, so Sebastian Lee here, right? If you see here, the hello world, my name is, let's see the header name. Yeah, it's the Sebastian Lee, right? So we want to make it, we want to change the color of our color primary 5. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Let's see a font size, for example, like 72 pixel. Okay, it changed things. Oh yeah, it's the header, not the about, not the hero. That's why I was confused. Yeah, so the header here is blue. And yeah, so I think the header title here, we just, if we see previously like this, but if you add the justify content and align items, it will center. Yeah. So if we go ahead and then change the header name, it's already Sebastian Lee. Now we want to target the nav. Here the nav, right? So the nav is inside the header, which is of ID header. But yeah, since header here is unique anyways, we can just use header nav, and then display none. So why display none here? So we'll be completely remove the whole thing, right? We will have like later on in the JavaScript section, by default, I think the link is not displayed. So we want to make it display none. But for, I guess, sanity's sake, I will just comment it for now. But we will have a display none here by default so that you only click the button and then the link will show. And yeah, and then header, nav, UL here. So it's simple stuff here. We want to decorate this unordered list, display, flex. And yeah, we have the list style none. So list style none will just make sure that it has the kind of things where you remove this dot point, and now it's just going left to right. So I think in this website, this example, for example, this link like left to right still makes sense because that doesn't have, we don't have like a lot of links anyway, so it still can, the design of left to right still can still work. We just want to make sure that it has a gap between each one. So now we have a gap, and can also go ahead with aligning the items. So if we align the items, notice that this about projects contact view resume, it's like the view resume is kind of like a bit, I don't know, it doesn't sit right that it has like a more takes more space on the bottom. So if you just align item center here, it will just be like very center, right? So I think this just looks better. So like it looks very center. And now we have the padding left of 0. So padding left of 0. So this just makes sure that it like just go from left. So now we have more space, right? You should have previously we have padding here. Doesn't look as good. But now if we have this padding left 0, just like centered, align with the Sebastian leaning. We have also flex wrap. So this just makes sure that it doesn't go into the next line, I believe. So now I think if we have this flex wrap, just make sure it doesn't go into the next line. So like controls whether the flex container is single line or multi-line, and then the direction of cross axis. Yeah. So can go into the anchor tag, ULLIA. So notice that it's like space. So if it's space, it means that it's inside something. So yeah, you can see this header nav ULLIA. Just like a bit more, yeah, which is the same thing as this header nav ULLIA, which is like always inside things. Yeah, we can use color here, fire, color, neutral, black. And so now you have the color of just black by default. And then we have the header nav ULLIA.btn with the color of white. So like the button by default will have the color of white. Neutral white. Yeah. Okay. So doesn't have any difference. So the reason is because in the Figma file, we intended to have the view resume to have a button. So we can just go ahead and then make an anchor tag here of class btn. View resume, remove it here. So if we go here now, it should be, yeah. Now the view resume should have like the button kind of design. Yeah. And we can also go into the media. So now we want to make sure it's good for the desktop itself, right? Because this is not the design that we are looking for in desktop. So because we implement in the mobile first in mind, all of this stuff by default is mobile. So we want to also implement for the desktop, right? So if you want to implement stuff for the desktop with a bigger screen, you can go ahead and use this media only screen for like a selecting only screen with a minimum width of 768 pixel. So this number comes from, I think, the standard convention. If you see like minimum desktop width, usually the number is like 768. I think in the variables also like, yeah, tablet. It's basically for tablet. For iPads, I think that's the standard pixel, the cutoff. In desktop, like laptops, 1000 is. So yeah, so this will just go starting with a tablet like iPad. So everything inside this will only applies for screen with the size of iPad. So header here, display, flex, because now we want to make sure based on the Figma here, it's like going from left to right, right? So no top to bottom in these two direction. So, and then the header has like two child, the div and nav. So we want to make a display flex and the flex direction is row. Yeah. If you don't have this flex direction row, it's fine because flex direction by default is row, but just being more explicit is always okay. And justify content of space between. Yeah. So what does justify content space between do? So now here we see it's like about projects contact view resume, right? We want to separate things up, right? Let's see if we can open this stuff now. Okay, it's not working. So yeah, but later on, if you open this CSS Flex website, kind of like let you know about like how each of these flex works. Yeah, we want to put a justify content space between so that it goes like this. Yeah, so it's perfect for desktop now. But it also doesn't harm in mobile. And then also the header nav display should be blocked. Doesn't make any difference, but I think it's usually just making sure it's like as a block. I guess I can just remove it for now and see what happens. I'm a bit forget what it does, but the menu button here, we have the menu button. Let's see. Do we have a menu button here? Okay, we don't have one. So yeah, we can just go ahead and ignore this stuff also for now. And then we can go ahead with the hero now. And yeah, so if we click this inspect element, yeah, it looks okay for the mobile and also okay for the desktop. It's nice. And yeah, so we want to design this Bastian for now with the hero start, hero end. So we can go ahead and like specify hero. So with the ID of hero, it always specify anything with the ID of hero here. So should be enough. Display flex. Notice that this always goes like I think top to bottom. So we also just want to make sure it's top to bottom. So I guess up until this point, it's kind of the same. But now that we have this flex display and flex direction, we can have gap, which is like one of the most useful things flex provides, so that it has a gap between each stuff. So yeah, gives like each each element has a spacing between, which is nice. And yeah, and we can go now to the intro text. So now we have done the hero, right? We want to go to the intro text, hero intro text, hero description. Wait, yeah. Font size of 1.5 rem. So now if we go here, the description here is like bigger. This is what we see in the Figma file. It's bigger than the usual one. So 1.5 is just like 1.5 bigger than the usual one. Because usually by default, I think the font size 1 rem. Yeah. And then now we also want to make sure the intro, if you see here, the intro is blue. So we can just go ahead and then resize this hero intro tracks to color of blue. So our blue is just primary 5 here. Primary 5. Yeah. And yeah, now it's blue. And in here, I think by default, this paragraph is also like grayish, not black. So we can go ahead and select the description, color of bright of grayish. So I think the color tone we use is color neutral 7 here. So yeah, now it's gray. Also, we'll go ahead and then add spacing here. I think we should add the spacing here. Yeah, it just looks better. Hero description. And yeah, now we see it here now. It's nice. But we also keep in mind that in the Figma, the software engineer is black. So now that we have a span, what the one that we have the descripted before, we can go ahead and hero description span, and then just follow for color natural black. Yeah, this one. And so if you go ahead here, yeah, it will be black here. Software engineer. And yeah, and then we have social links of also the one that we have here. So let's see. Think if we have the social links here. Yeah, so this div, as I have explained before, I think I missed this part. Most divs should always has a class because div is not enough to describe it. So I missed this thing. So it should be like hero social links. So now that we can easily provide select the social links. And yeah, just go ahead and go back to the CSS file, hero social links, and yeah, hero social links. Now, if we see here, the social links, I think by default is go if it's in the mobile, still goes to top to bottom. So you can just still use display flex. Oh, or maybe not. I think it's you need to go like from left to right. So if you use display flex, it will fix that issue, I think. Yeah, nice. So as I explained before, this now is just left to right, just becomes nice. We want to make flex wrap into wrap. Just I think it's always making sure it's one line, like doesn't. Oh, it's not one line. I think flex wrap. I forgot. Flex wrap is to make sure that if it goes to the maximum width, if it goes more, it will just go into the next line, which is nice. So I think if I modify here, for example, here, right? Yeah, it will go. It will just go down. So if we don't have this, I think, yeah. So it will just like it will never move into the next line, which just not a I just think that the UI is better if we just go to the next line. So we can go ahead and use flex wrap here. Yeah, and then we have a gap to make sure that it has a nice little gap between each button. Yeah. So And yeah, if you see here, yeah, so you see here the button is like has a different color. So we can go ahead and just make sure it has a different styling. Hero social links A, whereas the background color of just the gray is color. So that's the color neutral 0. And then we have the color here of the now since it's gray, I think the font color was black. So just color neutral black here is the one we're gonna choose. Yeah. So now yeah, it's looks like with the design that we have in mind. Yeah, looking good so far. We have about 7 minutes left for those who wanna leave on time. But I'm probably just we have all the resources. So if you need to go, just leave later on. But I'm just trying to finish like maybe as soon as I finish this stuff, which doesn't take a long more time, but should be way over the time limit. Yeah. Now let's see what we need to do to make sure that it behaves kind of uh, differently in a browser. So notice that I think in the mobile, it looks fine, right? It has a good font size, but I think it's just not still as big in the browser. So we can just go ahead and just copy this media only screen. So the structure we are aiming for, like this media only screen, is there for every section. So I'm just going to copy this media only screen max width. Just remove all of this. So this is for this hero section. I'm just gonna add this hero intro text and hero description. We want to make sure the font size is bigger. So this should be 2 Arial. Yeah. So I think I missed code here. Yeah. So now we should see the website here. It's a bigger font size, which is the look that we are, I think, looking for. But it's still not as big in the mobile because we have this, it's only selects for the desktop. So yeah, we have the about now. So yeah, almost finishing. We can just quickly just select the about and display flex direction of column. And so with about here, we by default goes top to bottom. So the flex direction is column here. So yeah, because if you remove this, it will just go left to right, which looks quite bad in mobile. Just column here, and then we have a gap here to make sure it has some distance. Yeah, now it has a gap in between. And yeah, I think that's all for the about. And then so to make sure that this aligns on desktop, we don't want to have this, right? We want to have like left to right. So we just can go ahead and then copy these things again. And then for about, it has the flex direction of row. Yeah. So just to clarify more things, these things apply to everything because we don't select anything, right? So display flex is always there, no matter what, but the flex direction row in desktop overrides the column here. And now it's left to right, which is nice. And yeah, so just the projects part now. It's almost done. Projects content container, project start. Yeah. So you can go ahead and select projects here. And we just use the same cookie cutter here. Display flex direction column gap 1 rem 1.5 1.5. So it just goes top to down. And yeah, I think it might also be nice if we want to make things here. This can also be a content container thing, because you see these things are like the same, right? But since only two things are the same, the hero is like a bit different. Yeah, we can just specify things separately. Then now we want to have we have this in the projects here, right? We have the project item description and project items actions. So we can go ahead and select it. Project item description, display flex direction. So the item description is this stuff. So it's always goes top to bottom. And we'll have to have some gap here. One rem. Yeah. So that's it. Okay, I don't think it applies. So let's see if something is wrong in the HTML side. Oh yeah, just missing the strip here. So yeah, I'm just gonna switch it back to one rem again. Yeah, sorry. And yeah, so one more thing in the project item actions, we have the display flex gap of 0.5 rem. And this is the action itself. Oh yeah, just one more thing. Yeah, so now it's nice. We have some distance here. And so I think one more thing that will be useful is if we inspect for mobile, it's nice. But yeah, these things should be on the right? You see the Figma. Oh yeah, the image should be on the left. So we can go ahead and then make sure that it sends it. So just go ahead and copy paste it again. And yeah, so we can just go ahead and select projects here. Flex direction is row. Align items are center. So the projects here is if we use this, yeah, it goes like from left to right, and then we have align item center. So let's see what happens. Right, center gap is 4M. Yeah, doesn't look as good. Let's see what happened. We want to fix some stuff. Yeah, it goes like from left to right, but this should be in the inside, right? So what we can do is we can go ahead and move this H2 into this stuff in the projects. So now it looks well. Yeah. But I think the design is looking like this, right? And so it might not be as well, might not look as good. So if you're fine with this, that's okay. But the thing that we are missing is these two things should be all under a div. So if we do it here, we can make a div again of a project item. That's why it's a project item description, right? So you can just copy paste all of this into the div here, right? Just remove all of this. And then the projects instead should go into the top level. Yeah, sorry. Might be a bit confusing, but basically what I'm doing was just making sure all these two elements, the image and div, is containing inside a new div, which we haven't added before. Now if you look at things, might still not look as well because we are missing one thing, which is to make sure that the whole project is still goes to top to down. So we can just add one more thing in CSS here, which is the basically the project item also need to have the same property here. Let's see. Okay, might be missing something. Oh, see, inspect. Yeah, if we inspect, it looks good. And I think if I just add something here, gap for rem, display flex. So let's think. And project item description, project item actions, display flex. This should go from top to down. Let's see, index.html, div class project item, container projects. Oh, I might select things wrong. Let's see what happens under the hood. So I will show you how we debug things in CSS. So if we responsive here, here, so we can go ahead and then use this click here, projects. And then yeah, we have this project action here. So yeah, in the hashtag projects, if you see here, I'm not sure if it's big enough. Yeah, this is how we debug things in HTML, CSS. We have these projects here, right? And then yeah, this flat direction is row, but I think it should be column. So if you go to column, it will look like this, which is what I think what we are aiming for, right? So, and then this is applied to hashtag projects. So we can go ahead in here. I think this should aim to column. Let's see. Yeah, now it's fixed. And then it's still fixed here, right? It's nice. But this should go into left, right? So I think what we are aiming here, this is not the projects, it should be the project item. so that the H2 itself is not affected. It's just affecting this container here. And yeah, I think this is all for the website. And let's see if I'm missing something. I think one minor thing is just that the projects are not well aligned. Think, yeah. But other than that, I think it looks good. I might forget a bit something, so it may take a bit more time if you want to debug it, but I'm just gonna go ahead and yeah. So if you want to stay, what we are gonna do for the next step for a bit is just I want to add the script JS file so that the menu button is responsive. But yeah, never mind. I think we're just go ahead with this design for now. I will let you can still look at the final codes. I think just one missing thing from the presentation is uh, when we make it in mobile, thing responsive. Yeah. So if we see it in mobile here, yeah, one missing thing is that I think we want to make a button here so that it previews. So this thing is not view as normally. So just you click it and then you open it, you expand it. But I think this design is still looking well as is. And yeah. So yeah, I think we're just gonna end the workshop now. But feel free to look at the GitHub to see what works behind the hood. And yeah, so I guess the next step for this is if you want to deploy it to GitHub pages, I think that's like a quick thing to do. So I can just go ahead and do that. So if you have the git command handy, you can just use git add here. But for those who doesn't have GitHub yet or like set up, you can just I think manually drag and drop the website, like upload, make a new repository and upload, drag and drop. Yeah, I have that in my GitHub, in my Notion handbook on how to deploy it. But yeah, I'm just gonna show it live on how I will deploy it here. Git commit m add portfolio live. So git add is just adding it to locally, adding all the files that you want to add. So sometimes you don't want to add all the files, right? So the git commit m stands for adding the commit message. So add portfolio live folder. So yeah, so if you git status, it has if you see the status here, it has been stored locally. And then if you use git log, for example, it has like the latest change here. So we want to, it's already stored locally, but we want to push it. So push it is just making sync it to the cloud, to the GitHub itself. And yeah, I think I don't have connection. So that's why I think since the end we cannot do git push. I will just use my phone as a personal hotspot for now. I think it should take less than 5 minutes if you want to stay. But if you want to leave, feel free to leave. Just connect with my phone. Yeah, let's see git push again. Okay, it's working now. Yeah. So just use my folder here. I think intro to web dev. Yeah. So we see that in the repository here we have 1 minute ago. It means yeah, if we have the things here, settings, we can. So in the GitHub pages, if you have met your repository, you can go ahead, go to the settings page here, and then there's a section called pages, and then you can deploy from a branch or GitHub Actions. I'm just gonna go ahead, maybe use GitHub Actions, and or maybe not. I think it's like GitHub Action is usually from a framework. So if you use React, for example, because React is just like you want to build into something, right? But this is just a very basic stuff. So you just deploy from a branch. So without it, I think what we're gonna hear is the portfolio live folder, portfolio live, or maybe let's see. Oh yeah, I think that should be fine. Just rename it pages. Yeah. So it will take a while for now, because it doesn't have the root here. So if you want to check it, I have like my other repository which I've made before. So it will look like this. I will just go to Sebastian Lee, Sebastian, I believe. Yeah. So this is like the same one. If you go to the pages here, yeah, you just have the branch which is slash from root, and then later on, you can go into the settings here. So if you go to the settings, there's a command use your GitHub Pages website, so they will automatically find the domain for you. Fetch the domain. It will look something like this. So you open it, and it's just automatically deployed here. So yeah, it's a bit different from what we made, because I think the workshop that I did last year for this one was like 3 hours, but now it's like only 2 hours. So have more things to have. So I think one missing thing here is if we inspect here, we have this button here, which is not filled previously, but I think it's fine here because yeah, it's just like a simple thing that JavaScript can do. Yeah, so I guess let's see if this is actually already deployed. Just want to make sure that I did all the steps. About use your GitHub Pages website. Yeah, so site not found. Okay, yeah, sometimes GitHub Pages take a while, but yeah, all the steps should be like that. If not, you can just check my post here and here, I believe, in the Notion handbook. And yeah, you can see like how I kind of do things here, step to step, step from step, and then like yeah, should be the same. And yeah, I'm just gonna end the workshop now. Thank you so much for joining.